Now, the coronavirus outbreak has also put unprecedented political pressure on Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews. There's still an inquiry to come into the origins of this second wave and who is responsible. This could get very ugly for the state Labor government. Yet politically, the blame game continues, with Labor shifting the blame, particularly in aged care, onto Scott Morrison. Joining me now to discuss this is former Victorian Federal Labor MP Michael Danby in Melbourne. Michael, how much pressure, in your view, is Daniel Andrews under right now?
This is so serious, Shari, this state of disaster. Daniel himself has said, the Premier, that the chips will fall where they may. This is so serious that if there are conclusions made at this inquiry that criticise any of the members or indeed the Premier, that will be absolutely influential at the next election in 2 years' time.
Do you think he is personally worried behind the scenes at what is going to emerge at this upcoming inquiry?
Well, he has said the chips will fall where they may. Premier Daniel Andrews is a member of the Socialist left. You'll never hear that on the ABC, but it's relevant. Up until now, people like me were willing to support him because we saw him as infrastructure Dan, building undergrounds and level crossings, great. But this situation is, as he has decreed it, a disaster. And if any of the decisions not to have the police or the army involved were made for ideological reasons, then people will make very harsh judgments. And as for the bozos, and I use that word advisedly, in the United Workers Union, who are making excuses for their members, even if the army and the police were not involved in supervising them as they were in all other states, you didn't have to have relations of various kinds with returnees from this pandemic overseas. You should have just been able to apply common sense. So the UWU and their members really, in my view, made terrible personal decisions that didn't need the police or the army supervision. That should have been there like it was in all other states. But this inquiry could be very harsh.
Michael, that response there has thrown up a couple of fascinating things. Firstly, you're from the Labor right faction. Do your colleagues in the Victorian Party feel the same way as you do? Are they prepared to look at throwing Daniel Andrews under a bus depending on the outcome of this inquiry?
No one is prepared to do that at the moment. The Premier is doing absolutely the right thing. He's doing the harshest thing possible because this thing has got out of control. It should never have got out of control. And who is to blame for this will come out of this judicial inquiry. But at the moment, as the Prime Minister says, we're all Melburnians. And we have to act together because otherwise this thing won't be 5 or 6 or 700 a day. It'll be 5 or 6 or 7,000 a day.
Absolutely. But as a result of this inquiry, you're saying there will be no future leadership pressure on him?
Oh, it depends what the results of it are. If they find mistakes amongst the ministers or amongst him, Daniel Andrews has said this himself, the chips will fall where they may.
So so leadership pressure will come on him from the right, depending on the outcome of the inquiry?
Depending on the outcome of the inquiry. But he and other ministers, he said, if they're called by the Commissioner, will have to go, have to give frank answers. I think there's a strong case for federal and state parliament all going back. That committee that was not abolished, but suspended but with the Labor majority should be allowed to have its meetings. People expect there to be more supervision over all of this, even apart from the judicial inquiry.
Look, you also brought up the UWU, one of the unions in Melbourne that some of the Victorian ministers are aligned to, who made the decision to hire these, as you call them, bozo security firms. What are you concerned about has happened behind the scenes here? Do you think there were politicians who came under pressure from the union and that is why they hired firms who were unionised?
The UWU is an amalgamation of United Voice and the National Union of Workers. The union, unfortunately, for most Victorians has gone to the left, including its members. It's because its officials and former officials are so weak-minded that they couldn't stand up to the sort of left-wing hacks who were in United Voice. And what that has meant is you've got a union that is putting pressure on people aligned formally to the National Union of Workers. I cannot believe that decisions were made to employ those hotel bouncers because of the UWU. Surely it's not possible, but the inquiry will find that out.
Look, just on another topic, you probably just heard the interview I did with the professor of Flinders University in Adelaide, Nikolai Petrovsky. He was very upset that the federal government's not kicking in money for his vaccine candidate, which is further ahead than the others around the world and in Australia. And he said he's had to contact other governments who are now interested, including the Canadian government. Yet he just said that the university the federal government is putting money towards is the University of Queensland, which has been in the news recently for its ties to the Chinese government, and we know about Drew Pavlou. What do you make of this?
Doesn't the federal government connect one event with the other? The University of Queensland is the last person or last organisation I would be giving major research money to during this coronavirus. Who knows whether they will share it with Beijing or not? I contacted Peter Varghese, who's a person I used to know in the past, the Chancellor of University of Queensland, and I told him the treatment of Pavlou and their attitude towards China is demeaning the whole aspect of universities in general, but the University of Queensland in particular. I appeal. Let's forget the federal health minister and the Victorian health minister. They should be after that bloke Flinders with their arms out. I make an appeal on your program, Shari, to Anthony Pratt or any of Australia's major philanthropists. Go and grab this guy with both arms in Flinders, and you'll be world leaders. You'll be thanked by the world if you're able to get this pandemic solved with the vaccine that they're developing there at Flinders. And don't give it to the University of Queensland. Give it to some responsible organisation.